Hi, I hope this is recording. My name is Nina Schuback. I'm going to present SCOR Working Group 156, which is about establishing active fluorescence as a primary productivity metric for the world's coasts and oceans. And in case I run out of time at the end of this recording, I want to say that this will be our last presentation because our SCOR Working Group is finished. We've been going for a really long time now, actually. And I really want to thank SCOR for funding us because this has been a great opportunity and a lot of collaborations got established through this working group, which will live on after the official working group is now over. Okay, so I'm going to start with a very quick introduction so you know what the hell I'm talking about. Active fluorometers, active chlorophyll A fluorometers are these very enigmatic instruments which are always marketed kind of aggressively as something you can use to measure phytoplankton primary productivity, so the fixation of inorganic carbon to organic carbon products by phytoplankton in the ocean. And obviously that's a rate we really want to understand better and be able to measure at higher temporal and spatial resolution and at more accuracy if possible. Of course, it's not quite as easy as this slide would make you think. There is a lot of confusion about how slightly different instruments types of this active fluorometers actually compare to each other, different sensitivities, different kinds of calibrating, different types of these instruments and how well they compare. Then it's easy to recognize that these fluorometers measure fluorescence. They don't actually measure primary productivity. So to get from these very specific and very well understood measurements of fluorescence to rates of productivity, we need to use models. And there's some slightly different models out there, and there's some confusion about which one is the best and how they even compare to each other. And if a model which is designed for a perfect photosynthetic electron transport chain really works for mixed phytoplankton assemblages in the ocean, where we measure this fluorescence, it's not always quite clear. There is some confusion about using different wavelengths of light. And if you do the spectral corrections right, oopsie, I did not want to go there. And then the rate we can really get to with these instruments quite confidently are rates of electron transport at the beginning of the photosynthetic process. And there's a big question mark about how these rates actually compare to rates of carbon assimilation, which in an ecological sense is probably the rate most people are interested in. One really big question mark as well, and something that's really, really hard for new people to this field is nomenclature, because everybody who works in this field uses their own nomenclature and refuses to use the standardized ones, which is slightly unnecessary, but makes this field very interesting. So to address some of these problems and make these instruments more exciting to people, because that's what they really, really are, we got this working group together in 2018, I think. We are really from all over the world, and there's lots of full members and then a long, long list, an ever-growing list of associate members. And we include people who work a lot with these instruments, also engineers who build these instruments, and people who are really interested in applying this data for modeling or remote sensing algorithms. Our objectives were to ensure or enhance intercomparability of the data you get from different instrument types, and so provide some consensus best practice, in particular to new users. Something we were thinking very deeply about this whole time is to develop some open source and platforms for instrument agnostic software for data analysis. And something I personally feel really strongly about was to try and get the community towards a global database structure. Because one of the really, really great things of these instruments is that they're optical and they can get really, really high resolution data. And we're now at the point that we can put them on autonomous instruments. So you could, not just in theory, like we can collect these really large and somewhat globally consistent data sets of active fluorescence measurements. And these measurements would just be so valuable for ecosystem models and remote sensing algorithms. I think it's something these instruments are still really, really underutilized for. but we'll get there eventually. So as I said, we started in 2018 or early 19. We had 2 in-person meetings, which were really great. Then there was COVID, which made things a bit more complicated. And we had a lot of Zoom meetings, which, if you saw the distribution of our people, wasn't always easy to find the best time to do these. But we kept in touch, and this year, we had the last Zoom meeting in 2022, and then more bilateral meetings because we were working a lot more specifically on our user guide. I'm going to get to that. And then this year we had a last meeting associated to this group, which was a visiting scholar exchange. So Ilana Berman-Frank and myself, we went to Brazil to visit Aurea Chiotti at Sebima. And I literally just got back a couple of days ago, so I'm still really jet-lagged. And it was a really, really nice visit. I got funded through one of the SCOR visiting scholar grants, and Ilana got some money from our working group to also help her come. And we had a really, really great time. We did some instrument comparisons and comparisons of sampling protocols, and just generally had a really, really good time together. And I want to thank SCOR for making this possible. And I'm sure the 3 of us will keep working together as much as we can. For the whole working group, so there were lots of little spin-off publications we had, and which will continue to come out surely. But really our main SCOR, one of our main objectives really were this user guide. So in 2021, we published a review paper in Frontiers in Marine Science, which really was a summary of this big user guide, which was going to come. Also in 21, we had the very first version of the user guide published, which was really just a small summary. And then we worked very, very hard in filling in the summary. And this year, I can't remember when, I think in June, we published the first full-length version on ocean best practice repositories. It's a huge document. If you want to know anything about active fluorescence, just read this document. Importantly, I put a little thing around it here. I don't know if you see my thing. This is at the moment open for community review. So if you're interested, please read it, even if you only read parts, and give us feedback. We hope that we will continuously revise this document, even after the working group itself doesn't exist anymore. So this was one of the main outputs of this working group, and really a huge effort over the last years. And we're very proud that we actually got this done. Then we do have a little bit of ongoing work still. Obviously, myself and Ilana and Aurea collected a lot of data just last month in Brazil. And we will work on analyzing some of this data and maybe collecting more data out of what we find. Then in December this year and January next year, quite a lot of people from our working group actually will take part in a big research expedition in the Southern Ocean and the South Atlantic Gyre. And we've got lots of different instrument kinds, which we can compare. I think it will actually be the cruise with most active fluorometers which have ever been on a ship together. It will be really, really fun. At the same time, Ilana will be on a different research expedition in the Mediterranean with the same instruments. So we want to try to have comparable protocols. And right now, as we speak, a student of one of our working group members, Dave Hugh, is off the coast of Australia with one of these instruments, also taking care to use exactly the same protocols as the other 2 of us will use. So this should be really good data coming out of this. We're also still working on using the same software for data from different instruments. Importantly, Spigish Kolber has been working a lot lately on making the software of an instrument he developed able to read files from other instruments. And this is a bit contentious. We've been having a lot of fun. but it's actually going remarkably well. And I think this will be very important work. And I hope that we're going to get to the point where we can all use the same software, maybe not on a regular basis, but be able to use the same software to analyze data from different instruments, because I think we can learn a lot from each other and make this data more intercomparable than it is now. So with this, I want to thank again SCOR for having funded this working group. I'm sorry I can't be there in real time to answer questions. But if you do have any questions, feel free to get in touch either with me or with the working group chairs, Philippe Totel and Dave Saget, who unfortunately also couldn't make it today. Okay, thank you very much. Where do I stop?